Welcome to AthleticDirectorU. My name is Bryan Blair. I'm the Deputy Athletic Director at Washington State University. I'm joined today by a living legend that needs no introduction. She's won 4 Olympic gold medals. She most recently led our women's team in Tokyo. She's been in multiple Hall of Fames. Just truly one of the great individuals in all of college athletics, Dawn Staley. Dawn, thanks for joining us. Let's dive right in. So you've been a head coach since 2000, I believe, where you started with Temple. And I think initially you didn't want to get into coaching. You turned your nose at it. Can you talk us through how you've progressed and grown as a head coach? Maybe some of your early mistakes that you've since learned from now in your 22nd year?
Wow, my career stretches, this is my 22nd year being a head coach. And as you mentioned, I didn't want to be a coach a day in my life. But once I got into it, it is my second skin. And if you've been in anything for 20 so years, you know there are a lot of things that you've learned, you've grown. Probably the one thing that I recognized very early in my career is just self-evaluation. I often share this story because I think this was the turning point in my career in doing things a little bit differently than I was used to. I had a point guard, a freshman point guard that I wanted to lead our basketball team. Like, I wanted that. And when I first came here to South Carolina, I knew what the senior point guard could do just from me watching film of her playing in another coach's system, and then this point guard that I brought in from New York. I just kind of went in on her. I just tried to prepare her and give her everything that she would need so she was ready for whatever anyone threw at her as a freshman. And I was hard on her. I brought her to tears a few times. But at the same time, we would talk through things throughout the season. We would talk through hard times. We would talk through good times. And then at some point, she shut down. And when she shut down, that's the worst feeling that you could have as a coach. And then you have to evaluate, hey, what did I do? What did I say? And I thought the things that I did say to her, I thought I followed back up just to kind of, ease her angst about what was happening. This was just a process in which we both had to trust. So at the end of that, her freshman year, we sat down and we had our postseason meeting. And I said, I apologize. I apologize for being so hard on her. I told her what I wanted from her. I didn't tell her in the front end of her freshman season like I wanted her to be the starting point guard. I told her on the back end during our postseason. I said, I wanted you to be our point guard. I knew what the other point guard, I knew she could be a good player, but I thought you could take our program to the next level. And I just tried to instill everything that I had in me as a point guard, give it to you, so you wouldn't flinch when someone threw something at you that you didn't think you could handle. And she said these words to me. She said, I wasn't ready. And I never thought that she would think that, or I never thought that I would think that she wasn't ready. So I apologized, and I told her I'm sorry for the way that she felt throughout the season. But I was like, it's me, it's me. It's on me to be able to reach a player. It's on me to be able to understand the dynamics of a young person and pivot. I didn't pivot. I just dove in because that's the way coaches approach me with playing. And as I look back on it, I'm still I'm still principled in just making sure that our players are disciplined. But there are a number of ways of doing that. So I had to just kind of put my point guard cap on and just imagine them as teammates. What would I do if I'm in the locker room with them when the coaches aren't in front of us? And I think once I put it in that perspective, I was able to just navigate a little bit better as a coach.
Absolutely. And I think realizing that about yourself and how you started seeing them as teammates, or how that changed maybe your approach to different individuals and getting different things out of them, And it's interesting that you use the example of a point guard. And obviously you were elite point guard, and somebody that a lot of young people look up to. As you think about being an elite athlete and transitioning into coaching, and I was there at South Carolina with you. I was there with Coach Spurrier as he coached quarterbacks and you as point guards and the like. Are there inherent challenges that you see going from being an elite athlete to coaching maybe the position you played, or just in general your expectations for the sport?
Well, I mean, when you mention like Coach Berry, and when you mention like even myself, and I don't really like to talk about myself in these terms, but when you've been an elite athlete, you've played at the highest level, you see things a lot differently than your average athlete. And I can't take into coaching the way I see the game and expect someone else to see it that way, because it is a God-given ability. It is, yes, you work at it. Yes, you were born with a certain skill set, but you also have to put into it. Like, I never had a normal childhood because I was so engrossed in the playing basketball. I wanted to know everything about basketball. I wanted to be the very best, and I did not let anything get in the way. Whereas nowadays, young people have a lot of things competing for their time. So I just try to, I don't dummy it down, but I just meet them where they are. So wherever they are, however they process information, whatever I see that makes them scrunch their face up, I'm just taking mental notes. She didn't really like how I said that, or she didn't really like how I said this. And then I would change, because the most important thing is for your message to be heard. Whatever it is delivered in a way that people can understand it. And once they have an understanding of it, they're going to be better at it. So for me, I just meet people where they are. I don't expect them to see it the way I see it. I don't expect them to play it the way I play it. I just expect them to approach it in a way of learning and wanting to grasp everything they want to get out of basketball.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy of meeting people where they are. And as I reflect back on seeing you in action, I know many others, I mean, one of your greatest attributes, at least in my opinion, you may disagree, is that I felt like you balanced high expectations and accountability, but with love at the same time. And you definitely held people to a really high standard, and you asked a lot of people around you. And a lot of times people, oh, why is she so hard? Or why is she asking for this? Why is she asking for that? But then you see the results, and then you also come back around and love people, and you treat people the right way. And balancing those two can be tricky. Can you talk a little bit about that approach and kind of how you came to that approach, or has that always been you, how you going about it?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the probably the best characteristics that I could say of myself is I like to think of myself as being a genuine person, just a authentic, organic person. Whether you like me or not, I'm going to give you who I am. I don't know any other person to be. And a lot of that is, I mean, I grew up in a household where I had a mother who was a disciplinarian. So I'm a rules follower. I'm a rule setter. I'm someone that likes to navigate within the confines of rules. And if we have some rules, I like to follow them. I like for everybody around me to follow the rules that we've established. And that is it is a hard balance, because most young people that I coach and that I encounter, their parents are younger. So they're probably a little bit more lenient. They only know of the internet and social media. So for me, I mean, my perspective is hey, let's do this thing the right way. Let's make sure we're respecting each other. Let's make sure that you represent how you want to be. Like, I think I approach it very pro-like, very like this is an organization in which we are prepping players to be pros. And what comes with that is very high expectations. What comes with that is being a motivated person within your craft, within and outside of your craft, because you never want to approach anything with a lackluster attitude. So you got to have your attitude in check. And I just think that some, I'm not going to say all, some young people are drawn to that. I know adults are drawn to that because they want to make sure their daughters are in a place where it's an environment where there's discipline. Even if, and I know some I've encountered some parents who are just, some of them are helicopter parents, some of them aren't very trusting, some of them just question the way things are. And what I do with them is I talk to them. I communicate with them the same way I'm communicating with their child, because it is a we thing. Because it takes an entire village to be able to raise a child, to raise a professional athlete, to raise a lawyer to be, a doctor to be. It takes an incredible amount of tough love and discipline and stick-to-itiveness in order for them to accomplish that. But I know even the ones that have transferred, when they look back on the time that they spent, whether it's at Temple University or here at the University of South Carolina, I know they are very proud of their time that they spent under our coaching staff.
Absolutely. And I think as you describe yourself and your genuineness and how you're authentic, but also how you go about coaching young ladies and or treating their parents, I mean, you kind of define who you are as a leader. When you're thinking about assembling the team, whether that be student athletes around you, your staff in the building, your coaching staff, I mean, how do you identify those characteristics on the front end to make sure the people that you're bringing in understand your style, respect your style, and can excel under your leadership?
Well, I mean, I look for people who are not necessarily, like me, meaning they don't think like me. I mean, what's synonymous with every single person that's in our program, in or around our program, is they work hard. Like, they work hard. Work hard. That is a prerequisite of being someone that's on our staff. They think outside the box a little bit, but they don't stray too far away from being principal beings. Like, when we start every year, we go back to the basics. Like, we go back to breaking our defense down to just being in a defensive stance and having balance to that. And then we build it up to opening up our hips, to drop crossing and running, to defending ball screen, all of that. It's the same thing that we've done almost 22 years, like the same thing. We haven't strayed away. It's worked for us. So we're principled in our beliefs, but we're also creative in knowing that the game has taken on a different dynamic. Young people want to work on some of the things that they work on with their trainers. So we got to add a little bit of that to what we're doing to keep them locked into what we want. So it's meeting them where they are, like, and taking people where they want to go. We have that mentality when we start assembling a staff and putting together players who want to be challenged every single day. Like, if you don't want to be challenged every day, and I'm the first one to say that I'm not the coach for you, because I don't really like lazy. I don't really like people who aren't approaching basketball with the mentality of wanting to have it all. Like, I want our players to have it all. I want them to generate generational wealth. You can do that. You can do that now in women's basketball with the NIL. You can do that with going to play in the WNBA and going overseas to play. You can change generations to come in your family if you're dedicated to this, because there are so many positions in our sport that generate a lot of money for you individually, and that's all I want to be around is people who are about just that. And they may not get it, meaning like our assistant coaches are the backbone of our program. But I'm the head coach. I make more than them, but they approach it the same way, no matter what the cost is, because it's not what they make. It's how basketball makes them feel. It's about how being a dream merchant makes them feel every single day. And, that's why this thing works. We don't have a whole lot of turnover here in our program. I've had an associate head coach for 20 out of my 22 years, or 19 out of my 21 years coaching. I've had a director of basketball operations 14 years, my 14 years that I've been here at South Carolina. My assistant's been here about 10 years. Another assistant coach, he's been here, I believe, 7 or 8 years, but he also spent 2 with me at Temple University. We've had, director of player personnel, all 13 years, 14 years I've been here in South Carolina. So there's not a whole lot of turnover, because when you love what you do and we try to do things the right way, it's a cool environment to be in, and that's what I look for. But we don't look too often because we don't have a whole lot of turnover.
Yeah, and I love hearing that, because I think, as you talk about laying those expectations out in the front end, people know what they're walking into or getting into with working with your program. They know those expectations, or they know as a player what I'm signing up for. And it may not be for you. Every coach isn't for everybody. And I'm a firm believer in that. But to find those individuals to be up front, I think is really important. And as you talk through that staff and you talk about how long you guys have been together, I think ultimately that I'm a firm believer in the speed of trust. And having that trust between each other. I know where you're going to be. You know where I'm going to be. You know what to expect from me. It's not a whole lot of second guessing or those type of things, where we can have open conversations. And I think that's really important. And to hear you talk about it, and I never even thought about in terms of years how long your staff's been together. That's really impressive.
Well, Brian, it is like I can be the best version of myself because of who I've surrounded myself with. Like, I can just be me. There are no airs. It is like there's no job that's too big or too small for any one of us to do it. If we got a leak, if our roof is leaking, it's leaking on the court, well, I'll go grab a towel, I'll go grab a mop. Everybody else, when we would probably butt heads trying to wipe up, trying to wipe up the wet spot. And that is super cool. That is a super cool environment to be around. Like, and the expectations, like, when we go into homes, we feel like I consider myself an expert in basketball. I do. I put in the time as a player and now as a coach. So I'm an expert. I got the basketball stuff covered. If our players need other resources, we feel like we get the best. Like, we got the best trainer, we got the best strength and conditioning coach. We got the best of the best, and that's who we want. And our players feel good about, not just coming to me. They can come to any one staff member and get the information that they need to succeed, and that's how we want it. Our staff members, are they sometimes possessive? They are, because there are certain areas that you're responsible for, the academic portion of it, the scheduling portion of it, the scouting report portion of it, the life skills portion of it. We're all responsible for certain things, and we need everybody to bring their A game every time they walk through the door. And it just seems, if we move too fast for you, if we work too hard for you, you're gonna know, because you're gonna look like the eyeball in here, and people just usually have incredible buy-in, and they keep up with the pace that we move.
One of the things I've noticed about you is your ability to have a vision for what can be done before others see it. I think coming to South Carolina, even going back to your days at Temple, some of the things you've accomplished there, many people told you couldn't be done. Can you talk a little bit about how you establish that vision when others can't quite see it, and then how you pull along some of the naysayers that don't believe in what you think can be accomplished?
Well, I think when you're in the business of sports and athletics, you're without a doubt. There are some people who aren't going to believe what you believe. I think sometimes you gotta put it out there. You gotta manifest it in a way that comes from your heart. Like when I took the job here in May of 2008, I said, it's my job to take us to national prominence. And I believe that. Like, I truly believe that. And then other people that, you can look in their eyes and see that, they don't quite they want to believe you, but they don't want to quite, jump all the way in. And I love that. I love that hesitancy because that's a challenge to me. Every person that, that heard what I said, some of them believed it, some of them didn't. But the ones that didn't believe it, they just made that chip on this shoulder bigger and bigger and bigger, and they made me work harder and harder and harder. But you first have to start with culture. You have to really visualize, what is the perfect scenario for you? What's the perfect scenario for us here at South Carolina? And I thought the perfect scenario was just to take us to national prominence. And how do you do that? Is you got to get like-minded people. Like very early on, I found that you're going to be who the majority of your team is. Like if the majority of your team is, buttholes, you got a butthole team. Like that's what you got. And you got to work with that until you're able to establish the majority being people who want to be pros. They want to go to the next level. So when they become the majority, 8 versus 7, I mean, as long as you have the majority, you got a shot at changing the culture and winning. And very early on, we figured that out. Like when we first got here, some of the players, they just thought their scholarship was a byproduct of them becoming a doctor, lawyer. And don't get me wrong, they changed my perspective on things too, because in order for me to get what I want out of them on the court, I had to meet them to where they were, which was, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be this. So I had to just say, I got to be interested in the things that they're interested in. So they can meet me halfway and be interested in this basketball over here, because I'm used to winning. I want to win. I want to do it the right way. I want to service our young players. But honestly, I had never run into young people who didn't want to be professional athletes. Like all of my kids at Temple wanted to be pros, even though they didn't have the talent to do so. They had the mindset. They had the want to. But, the players that we inherited here at South Carolina, they drew a line in the sand. They were like, this is just part-time. Like, this is not really what I want to do. But if you talk to them right now, they would love to have a professional basketball career. So, I mean, you have to change the mentality. You have to be able to, take 2 steps backwards to move 1 step forward. That's how or maybe 3 or 4 to move 1 step forward. That's how I took it. Was I impatient with it? Absolutely. I drew just really impatient with it not turning around, as quickly as we would have liked. So, the AD that hired me, Eric Hyman, he was like, 3 years. We give you about 3 years before you really start seeing. And I'm looking at him like, no, I don't have 3 years. I mean, 3 years is a lot of years. But he had it, he had it dead on. By our 4th year, we were start moving into postseason play and getting the players in here that really understood the assignment, and which was pretty cool to see that evolution. And I didn't, I really thought it was professional suicide when I first came here to South Carolina, because we couldn't really get things going in a direction that I thought was quick enough. And it wasn't in terms of wins and losses. It was more in terms of that majority, that culture being wanting to learn and grow and be great at basketball. Like I went to college to play basketball. I mean, and getting a degree was a byproduct of that. It wasn't like, that wasn't why I went to college. Yeah, you could say all the right things, is I want to graduate from college, I want a degree. I wanted to win a national championship. And if I could get a degree along with that, cool. But and I find that, I'm kind of magnetic towards those players that have the gall to say, I want to play basketball. Like I'm gonna get my degree. I'm gonna do what I need to do to get my degree. Because we meet you where you are, whether it's in a classroom or whether it's on the court, to get you where you want to go, where you need to go. And I think we keep that in perspective. So we're able to get those kids in here that really believed in that. And once that took place, our program runs itself now. Like I don't have to go over to the dorms to make sure that they're doing the right things. No, I know. I trust our leaders. I trust the fact that I trust our culture, that if any one of our players, if they see, feel, or hear something that's out of place, they address it. And if they can't address it, they're going to text me and tell me, hey, this is going on. I can't do anything. So you might need to step in. So it's cool to see that evolution of a culture take place.
Yeah, I mean, one, your authenticity is refreshing. I mean, to hear you just be yourself and talk about what was important to you, because I think we sometimes live in this day and age where people find it offensive or inappropriate to say, I like to win. I want to win. We keep score for a reason. That's important. You don't have to forfeit everything else to accomplish that. And as you talk about the majority of the team in your makeup, it kind of flipped. And you got a nice subtle flex with the Team USA gear on right now. As you think about your experience in Tokyo coaching that team, where you got a team full of really talented women at women's basketball, and you're trying to pull all these collective talents, and sometimes that comes with ego. What lessons did you learn from that experience that maybe are a little different than coaching in the college game?
I really am not flexing. I double booked. I'm double booked. Like I got a USA basketball Zoom to do right after this. So so I thought I could knock it out the park with this gear. But coaching an Olympic team, it comes with a tremendous amount of pressure, because it's gold or failure. I mean, it's that simple. You win gold. You don't win gold, you fail. You win gold, you've understood the assignment and you accomplished it. But working with that level, honestly, it's easy. It's easy for me because I've been through the player side of it, so I have an understanding and expectation of what it takes to win a gold medal as a player. Nothing else really changes as a coach. It really doesn't. You just, as a coach, you got to get out of the way and allow those players to do what they do. They just need guidance every so often. And they need a little bit of detail on certain things that, as you're preparing for a game, that's what their expectations of you as their coach is. Other than that, don't talk too much. Don't overcoach. Okay, keep it light. Go in when you need to go in. When you feel like something is infringing on that culture of winning. Those ladies, they don't care anything about stats. They don't care anything about anything besides winning. And when they're bringing that to the table, it makes your job easy. It makes your job so easy just to say, hey, this is kind of routine. This is how we're going to do things. And, that is a pretty cool environment. What's not so cool is you got to come back and coach a college team. and sometimes you got to motivate a little bit. Sometimes you got to make sure they're okay. Sometimes you got to make sure that they didn't fail a class, they didn't miss a class, they weren't late for class. All the stuff that professionals they just take care of their business. But this is a training ground. College is a training ground for creating those type of opportunities for young people to take advantage of, and that's being an Olympic gold medal player.
We want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the growth of women's basketball nationally. And I think just starting locally there at South Carolina, everybody's impressed by the wins and what you built from a recruiting standpoint. I think equally as impressive is the fan base you built in South Carolina, and whether it was the G Hive or the FAMs or all the creativity you and your staff put out. Can you kind of walk through what it was like to build that from the ground up? I remember the days of every high school and every team in the state could get in and kind of growing from that. Can you kind of talk through what it was like to build that up to where it is today?
Well, I mean, honestly, I've always speak honestly. We mommed and popped it, and I know, as ADs all across the country, and just women's basketball programs all across the country, your budget isn't huge. Your marketing budget isn't very big, so you work with what you have, and for us, we just pound the pavements. We would if we had something new in our office, we would ask our fans to come in and check it out. Hey, come check our office. Our new office is out. Come walk through. We would give them a tour of it, and we made them feel good. And because we made them feel good, they started going out and telling our story. Hey, go check out the women's basketball team. Go just walk up to their office. They'll let you in. They'll show you around. Only thing we ask is you come to the games. And it took a while. I will say one of our marketing director, Eric Nichols, did a great job 1 year playing off of me coaching in the Olympic Games. I think it was 2000 and I coached in. It was probably after that, probably 2009, maybe 2010. He came up with a drive for 5,000 fans to come buy season tickets. Not even buy season tickets, just come to the games. And the 5 was playing off my Olympic number, which was number 5. And we blew that number out of the water. And then from that year on, we had the likes of Tiffany Mitchell, who was from Charlotte, North Carolina. And then after her, we had Lisa Welch, right from Charleston, South Carolina. Then we had, Asia Wilson. She came up, Elena Coates, right here in Irmo, South Carolina. And then Asia Wilson, who, it was just, and I don't know why it turned out that way, but we ended up having the best talent in the country, like right here. There's nobody in the country that can recruit them like we can recruit them, because if you get 7 times to see them, you're going to their place to see them play. You're gonna run into them in the grocery store. You're gonna run into somebody that knows them. You're gonna run into a relative that knows them, and you just spark up conversations, and that's the way it was. And we made it really hard for them to tell us no. And once we created I think we created what a national championship team looked like well before we were equipped with winning national championships. And I think it has to start with that. It's a process in which you have to create a home court advantage, because going on the road is so much harder to win than it is here at home. But if you can create it, if you can make it so loud in there that it gives you the spark that you need when you're down. But furthermore, we've turned this place into, like, on any given day that we're playing, we're the hottest ticket in town. And when your women's basketball program is the hottest ticket in town, you're doing something right. So it goes back to this saying, and I got this saying, and it fits so perfectly with one of our fams. He said his grandmother told him, when you treat people good, they treat you better. So we've treated our fams so good, and in return, they treat us better by coming into Colonial Life Arena, selling it out, scalping tickets for more than the face value, and making us feel really good about who we are here at South Carolina, what we represent, and knowing that once you come into our building, you got a fight on your hand that not very many people leave out of our building victorious.
I love that line. When you treat people good, they treat you better.
It's so true.
I mean,
it's
God,
so true. So true.
that goes into so many different areas. And I think what you mentioned about giving the people the tours, getting people in the facility, letting people see you, get to know you. I think to get to know you is to love you. And I think that's what happened. I think people fell in love with the authenticity. They fell in love with the hard work and the passion your young ladies play with. And you're right, you're the hottest ticket in town now. And that didn't happen overnight, but over time, I mean, you look at that atmosphere now, and it's got to be one of, if not the top environment in women's basketball. I think looking at what you built there and what's been accomplished there, NCAA just had this audit, and we're talking about the future of women's basketball. I mean, if you were commissioner of college women's basketball today, what would be your vision? What do you want to see for the game that you love?
What I would want to see is, I would want to see it more equitable. And the word equitable isn't equal. It's not, because there are things that we want and need as women's basketball players and coaches that the men just don't need. But when it comes to just valuing the product that we put on the floor, you can't help but to think that that we can't be a revenue producing sport. You can't think that. If you would just do the things, market our game just like you market men's basketball. If you pour into what you pour into men's basketball, we may not make as much, but we would certainly be out the red. I mean, way out the red. And I just don't understand why people don't want to pour into women's basketball and make it a revenue producing sport. Because there's so many people that love what we do. There's so much support out there. Why can't we have a formula to see, our success in the form of being a multi-million-dollar business? So I would start there, just pouring in and see where, if we're a sport that loses money, you can only go up. So if you pour in and you lose money, you're still at the same spot. But if you pour in and you make money and you create this, because I think we're a hotbed. I think women's basketball is a hotbed. So I would definitely scale up, pour into us, and see where that takes us. And we can pull our own weight. We don't have to pull from what March Madness bring in on the men's side. Let us pay for our own bills. Let us bet on us. So I think it's going to get done at some point, and hopefully we can make up for some lost time that has occurred over the past decades, and make this a sport in which we know everyone can be proud of.
Absolutely. And I think what's come to light, and it probably should have been to light a long time ago, is this assumption that people aren't interested or people don't care or people won't watch. And I think you've proven it there, and there have been multiple instances across the country, WNBA, the Final Four, all these instances where the product on the floor is as good or better than the men's side. The games are more entertaining a lot of times. So we all need to check that assumption that for something, just because there's a counter program on the other side for men, that it can't be equal or even better than in a lot of circumstances. As you think about that notion and the audit that just happened, there's a lot of conversations about women being men's assistants on men's teams, or the salary comparisons between a women's basketball head coach and a men's basketball coach. Have you given that much thought? Or I know those questions always swirl around you annually. How do you respond to those?
I mean, it's all about worth. You know, I just actually watched a show on Netflix. It was called Worth, and it was regarding 9/11 victims. Like in the World Trade Centers, there were firemen and women, there were janitors, there were CEOs of companies. Like there was actually talk of, giving a CEO more money than a firefighter, more money than a janitor, just because of their worth. But what is worth? And that was one of the questions of the movie. What is worth? Worth is how you see it. Worth is how, for ADs is how you see, your coaches, your basketball coaches. For coaches, for me, I think I have a lot of worth. I think I've given a lot, to this university, to this athletics department, to this state, to this city, and I didn't do it for money. I didn't do it. I did it because that was the thing that was supposed to be done, and more so, people opened and embraced me and opened their arms to me, and they made me peel down my layers. So they made me give more of me because of how they made me feel. So do I feel like in some instances there should be women's basketball coaches that deserve equal pay? Absolutely. Do I think there's a such thing as fair market value? Absolutely. I do believe that. But I think you have to take it case by case. But I surely don't think I do anything different than Frank Martin. And I'm sure he doesn't do anything different than myself. And you can take that to university by university by university, and and the decision makers have to be the ones that determine that. But certainly, I'm not going to lower my standards just because I think I should be paid, equally. I'm not going to lower my standards, even if that doesn't take place. I'm not going to lower my standards. I'm always going to give the game of basketball everything that I've given it over my time, from since this love affair happened, and it happened a very, very long time ago. So my path has always been divinely ordered, Brian. So, if that's in my path, great. If it's not, I'm going to keep servicing our kids. I'm going to keep being a dream merchant for our kids, and surely I'll be repaid in other areas.
I love your passion. I get fired up hearing you talk. Makes me want to run through a brick wall. And that you just snuck in dream merchant. I'm going to have to steal that because I really, really like you when you said that. But I think as you talk about this notion of worth and what that means and how you define that, is that simply X's and O's? Is that simply revenue based? Is that simply all these other things? But I think one of the things you bring to the table so much is your role model for a lot of young ladies, a lot of people of your that black people throughout the country, and others that look up to you and say, well, Dawn Staley's doing it. That's a roadmap, or she's a trailblazer for what I'm trying to do. And you've been an Olympian. You're in multiple Hall of Fames. I mean, I'm talking to a living legend. And then my friend, Councilman Joe Dickey in Columbia, tells me that you're getting Dawn Staley Day here in West Columbia. As you think about you being a role model and what that means, I mean, do you feel an increased burden or duty? Is that something you think about, or you just go about being you at the highest level and let the rest of it take care of itself?
I'm just me. I really am. I'm just me, and I just feel like people connect with me because I'm just me. I don't put on any airs. I'm able to comfortably be in my skin and do what I feel is right. Like it's really a simple, way of living. I just try to do the right thing, and I try to do right by people. And if that is paving the way for others, great. But I do want to do that. I do want to pave the way for others. So, their path is a little more smooth than mine was. And I think we all just have to continue to reach back and do that for the people who are right there behind us, that's coming in next, that's going to take over our game and make it, make it special. I hope my contributions to the game is felt through anybody that is an enthusiast for the game or not, because not everybody loves basketball. They don't. But I know people love people who love, and I think they can see people who love something. Like I love to look at people who are great at what they do. I love to see their facial expressions. I love to see how calm and cool they are under pressure. I like all different. I'm watching NFL football and see the quarterback and see and watch the coaches as they pan and watch the fans. Some of the fans they think they're good coaches, but they lose their cool out. They lose their cool in the stands. I don't see as many coaches losing their cool. They're calm, they're cool, collected, and they've been there before. They've prepped to be in tight situations. So I love to see people like that. And I think people have a connection in watching me do the very thing that I love to do and be passionate about it. And if they don't understand or love basketball, and if that is their connection to basketball is watching me, I think that's a beautiful thing. But I do want them to watch our team play this year, because I feel like our team is a team they can really fall in love with.
In these last, 18 months now, it feels like the topic of social justice, anti-racism, these type of topics, we've had more open conversations, I feel like, at least in my short time on this earth. And you were certainly a major voice in those conversations, and you didn't shy away from having those conversations, whether it be social media interviews or otherwise. I mean, as you were going through that, and you are a black woman in the South, and taking an outspoken role on these issues, I mean, as you reflect back on when it was at its peak, what did you feel during those moments?
I mean, here's what here's what I felt. I felt the need to speak out. I didn't feel pressure to speak out. I just felt like, again, you got to go back to what is the right thing to do. And more times than not, I follow my heart. If my heart tells me, my heart is just full of something, it has to get out. And I just felt like some of the social injustices that were happening around our country. I coach, I coach. 90% of my players are black, and 90% of their parents are black that have gone through the things that we saw take place. And I just felt like I had to speak up for them, and I got to speak up for their parents, because there's some residual effects of what took place in Minneapolis, what took place all over this country. It's not even contained to one area. It's all over. So, and it's a part of the fabric of our lives. And we can't go on and just shut up and coach or shut up and dribble, because we're impacted by that. So if you're impacted by something outside of your sport, and we're human beings. I mean, we got feelings. Things happen to us and our families, that when you see something happen out there in the world, and that's the very thing that happened in your household, you feel it. And it has a direct impact on your ability to study, to learn, to play basketball. I felt the need to speak out on it because it hit home with some of our players. And I want to be a person that stands on the ground of doing what's right and saying what's right, even when the masses believe that's not the right thing to do or say. And I'll continue to do that because if you're a leader, I'm not talking black leader, I'm talking a leader, black, white, indifferent. If you're a leader, you have to address things that make you uncomfortable. Things that, I'm just not a leader of black kids. I'm a leader of white kids. I'm a leader of young kids. I'm a leader of, people who feel like, I'm something to them. So for me to sit on my hands during the time in which our country was in unrest, it's just not me, and it will never be me. So I'm going to continue to speak out on things that hit home to myself, to my players, and to anybody else that doesn't have a voice in the game.
Coach, I'd close with this. What advice, we got a lot of ADs, rising administrators, others watching this video, and we're hearing from one of the preeminent coaches of our time. What advice would you give for aspiring administrators watching this?
My advice would be, and it, for administrators, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's a hard place. It's a hard place. Athletics is a hard place to work because there's a certain culture that it's not diverse. I would say get diverse, and when and don't do it just to check off some numbers. Actually hear the voices of the majority. Hear the voices of the majority. Hear the voices of the minorities. Hear the voices of your student athletes. Hear the voices of the janitors, the people who clean. Hear the voices of the fans. Take it all in and make decisions based on hearing all voices and not just appeal to who the masses are. And I wish you the best of luck because it is it's a profession that there's a lot of room to grow. And I'm hoping that some of these young administrators are in a position to, have some thick skin and have some armor that gets chinked up, but you continue on to do the right thing and make the right decisions for all.
Absolutely. Well, you talked about your team getting better and better. I think we could all get better as a society and administrators. So, Coach, I appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.